Yo, what is going on? Cover One crew, welcome back to the show. Hope everybody is good. Monday Night Football is in the books, overtime, and those Chiefs, man, they cannot keep getting away with this. I don't understand. They just get into overtime, and it's like they just hit a different gear, and they just win every game. It's unbelievable. D-Hop goes off. But what are we talking about? Must-add players, week number 10. Season is far from over. 5 more weeks of fantasy glory before we go into the playoffs. And I'm telling y'all, I mean, okay, the waiver wire is getting a little skimpy at certain positions, but there still is decent depth to get us over the top. Let's bye week troubles. We got some this week. The Cleveland Brownies, Green Bay Packers, Las Vegas Raiders, and the Seattle Seahawks all on the bye week. Some more injuries did transpire as well this week, so we definitely got to hit the cupboards here on the waiver wire and see what we could grab, man. Running backs, let's start off again. Jalen Warren, those Steelers coming off the bye week. He still is going to be my top running back this week. He's 43% ownership right now. Could likely be there for y'all to pick up, and I mean, I get it. We got to be looking for, the guys that are a little bit further down the board, making impact plays, and I do believe Jalen Warren's role could increase after this bye week. He looked healthy, and maybe he's going to get some more sprinkles with a Russell Wilson. Dangerous, and I mean, okay, at least they're moving in the right direction. He's got to be owned at this point, and we got to start hedge betting a lot on these handcuffs, and hopefully we could get ourselves a running back with volume upside, no question. Jalen Warren definitely is my top priority back this week. Ray Davis, say hey, Ray! He is doing the business, man. What a catch he made. He looks explosive. In for a touchdown, 60-plus yards. And with the fact that Keon Coleman is down with a wrist injury, Amari Cooper down with a wrist injury, you gotta believe the Buffalo Bills are going to lean upon this ground game that much more with a James Cook and a Ray Davis. He definitely needs to be owned, especially if a Keon does sit, especially because the Bills have a Kansas City Chiefs in 2 weeks in Week 11. You know they want to have as many healthy bodies as humanly possible. Taking on the Colts this week, we could see some guys sit. So Ray Davis could have a massive expanded role this week. No question. He's got to be picked up. 25% ownership, almost 70 points. He looks good, y'all. Get Ray Davis on your team at this point. Outside of that, it is very skimpy, man. Tyler Algier got you, 7.5 PPR points this week. Found his way into that end zone. So, I mean, at least he's giving you something at this point that we can touch and play with. I mean, it is good. That sounded bad, but you know what I'm saying in football terms. Bijan Robinson is that dog. We know this, but at least Algier, I mean, if Bijan, something happens to him, we know Algier can at least carry the load. He is a primary handcuffed right now, and in deeper leagues, at least we can feel like we can play him on certain contests. Trey Benson, I've been telling y'all for a while now, he is a premier handcuff, for a James Conner and him and Demercado. I got him a little bit lower on my list here as well. But, I mean, Trey Benson, he was one of these dudes, man. At some point, they're going to absolutely continue to utilize this three-headed monster in the backfield. James Conner's backfield, no question. But if he goes down, he went out with an injury, came back into that contest this past week. If James Conner does go down, it's going to be a double-headed monster between a Benson and a Demercado. And Benson is a quality running back that's got speeds, got physicality, and he will showcase that. 22% on almost, 25 points is not terrible for a handcuff at this point. If you got room and you got a James Conner, I absolutely recommend hedge betting with this handcuff. Justice Hill continues his PPR climb. I mean, another 6.5 to 7 points. It's not great, but at least it's given us some PPR upside in a contest where Lamar Jackson continues to throw the football. That play action pass in Baltimore is working with ease, man. It's working so well. Derrick Henry sets up everything for Lamar Jackson. He's finding all his wide receivers. Hill's one of these guys, unless you're in dire need of a start in a running back, then I would look for him. Other than that, he kind of is my watch list right now. Likewise with a Braylon Allen. Outside of Breece Hall going down, at least the Jets showcased the fact last week on Thursday night, I believe it was, they were at least able to play ball and start Aaron Rodgers starting to be able to find his wide receivers in a Devontae, in a Garrett Wilson, and it looked a little bit better in that second half on Thursday night. So maybe this is a sign of things to come, but if Breece does go down, Braylon Allen is absolutely wide receiver one, heavy volume with TD upside week in, week out, no question. Cam Akers, he graces the board now. I've always been pushing the Ty Chandler If Aaron Jones goes down, you know it's going to be Cam. You know it's going to be Ty Chandler doing a 50-50. So he's just here on the watch list at this point. Not going to touch it because they are riding in Aaron Jones quite heavy right now, but at least he is on the watch list for running backs right now. Likewise with Blake Corum. Still a watch list player, massive handcuff for a Kyron Williams. This is how skimpy it is here in running back depth for these for the waiver wire. It is not good, man. So, I mean, likely you can fade most of these guys outside of the guys you do have that you want to handcuff is the only reason why Corum hasn't done much this season until something happens to a Kyron. Let's hope it doesn't. I'm just saying if something does happen, Blake is going to be massive. Demercado had a big game this past week, likewise with a Benson. They ran the football a lot this past week. The Cardinals showing a different dynamic in their offense. Kyler Murray basically had the game off, only got you, a handful of points, and the rest of it was running upside. So there is a possibility that they're figuring something out here with this run game. Tried to do it last week, and they did it very well. So Demercado in deeper leagues absolutely is on my list. And then Mims for the New Orleans Saints because we got, Kendre Miller, he's on the IR, and then Jamal Williams out with an injury. He's just here on the watch list as well as because Taysom Hill was backing up in Alvin Kamara for majority of that contest from the running back spot. Quarterback time. There is a lot of streaming quarterbacks. At least this one looks pretty good at this point. Tua Tagovailoa comes back from injury, and he looks good. I mean, 2 weeks in a row, he's been playing decently well and decent football, no question. 54% owned. Likely gone in majority of y'all's leagues, but at least 60 points almost on the board, and getting himself reintegrated back into this offense is a good thing. 20 points from a Tua week in, week out with guys like Waddle and Tyreek Hill, I think is a positive for your fantasy team. You could do a lot better because guys like CJ Stroud just ain't cutting it. So if you're going to the streaming wire, Tua's definitely one we got to look at. Likewise with a Justin Herbert. Herbie, he's back in the business, man. What did I say? 2 weeks ago? This was one of the uglier teams offensively. 2 weeks in a row, Herbert's got over 20 points. You got to love it, man. At least they're starting to figure something out. Ladd McConkey's got a very solid role on this team, almost taking that Keenan Allen role, and then they're taking the top off with a QJ and utilizing a Palmer as well. So at least we're moving in the right direction when it comes to this passing upside. Herbert, we know this guy can throw 5,000 in this league. It's about time they started shackling this offense and throwing the football that much more. It's only going to benefit the rushing upside of a J.K. Dobbins as well, but Herbert is back on my radar. 46% owned, almost 115 points. He is back, baby, in a very good way. I do like it in matchup play. Bo Nix coming off a, decent contest. I mean, a lot of that was in garbage time. So, and a lot of people are going to cuss, you said sit Sutton, blah, blah, blah. You know what, man? Sometimes it just is what it is. You didn't fully expect the Ravens to blow out the Broncos that bad and then take a haircut on defense in the second half because they had such a big lead, and that's where a lot of these players got their points from. Yes, I realize fantasy football is about garbage time productivity as well, but Bo Nix is doing more than enough, man. Almost, 155 points, 43% owned. He is out. He's got another tough matchup this week as well, but, I mean, he's looking the fact that even if they are getting blown out, they're not going to give up and they're going to continue to push. So Bo Nix, absolutely fantasy viable for the past 3-4 weeks now, and it is good stuff. Aaron Rodgers finds his fountain of youth this past week in that second half, finding Devontae, finding Garrett Wilson, like I was saying. And, I mean, it's good enough for a flex play or a streaming play, for your quarterback. That is no question for me. Aaron Rodgers, he will have his bust games because he is getting older. He isn't as mobile, but at least he's able to showcase the fact that he can still support his guys on the field. Aaron Rodgers definitely is a streaming option week in, week out. Likewise with Sunshine, Trevor Lawrence, even without the weapons that he does not have at this point, 2 rushing TDs this past week looked good enough, man. They almost came back versus the Eagles. Some mistakes by the Eagles, some bad reffing. I mean, that Barkley fumble, that to me was down by contact, but hey, I digress. Trevor Lawrence definitely is still in the mode that he can give us anywhere from the 17 to 20 points per week, even with a subset par of cast of wide receivers. It still is decently viable for fantasy play. Drake May figuring it out, my dude. I love me some Drake May. What a comeback he did try, and I mean, you got to see that safety creeping on the backside. Chucked it up to a Keyshawn Butte interception, ended the contest in overtime. No bueno for my guy Drake May, but at least he's starting to figure some stuff out. He's supremely athletic. You see some of those runs, it's like a baby Josh Allen out there. Love me some Drake May. Definitely only matchup play for me at this point because there is good upside as they move forward. Jameis Winston, what I tell y'all, the Jameis experience is like a roller coaster every single week. I told y'all, man, pump the brakes, man. Recency bias is a mofo, and it's always going to cripple y'all week in, week out. It's a week-to-week league, and we know Jameis's M.O., man, coming off a sweet contest versus the Ravens, lays an absolute duck versus the Chargers. Did not look good. So, I mean, with Jameis, you got to take it with a grain of salt. You're going to get your 3 picks. You might get 4 TDs. That's just Jameis. So, if you're risking the biscuit on a Jameis Winston, you got to understand what you're getting in for week in, week out. It's going to be a rough ride at times. Russell Wilson, dangerous. Okay, coming off the bye week, they look good so far. I mean, last game before the bye, he only got you, 12 points-ish? It wasn't great, but at least he's moving this offense down the field. Maybe the Steelers are going to find a way to trade for another wide receiver, give them some more weapons. We shall see as the NFL trade deadline is approaching, so we'll see. But Russ is definitely in matchup play upside with it. George Pickens, hopefully they can utilize their running backs in the pass game that much more. I do like a Russell Wilson moving forward. Daniel Jones, Daniel Pennies. Again, much like a Jameis Winston, it's a roller coaster ride of emotions that's probably going to get you hurt, man. And there's nothing else I can say. Just coming off a massive contest, we can't ignore it because he was like Danny Nichols and then Danny Dimes and then back to Danny Pennies again. It is what it is with Daniel Jones. Rough ride from time to time, but I mean, he does put up his contest and he does have rushing upside. We know the stick with a Daniel Jones. And then Joey Flacco. It was rough, man. It was rough this past week, rotating your quarterback in and out. I mean, again, Minnesota's defense is very solid. So, I mean, they play the Buffalo Bills this week. I'm likely fading a Joe Flacco this week, but he will have his upside from time to time in matchup play. Wide receivers, QJ, Quentin Johnston. What was my biggest harps on this man coming out of college was that he was a body catcher. At least we see some moments of bliss where he is catching with his hands. I can get on board. As long as the player is progressing, I can absolutely get on board. He's got wheels for days. Speed is there. As long as they can get him the football, he's going to make some plays. Just understand the drops will also come. I do like the fact in how they're moving forward in LA with this passing offense. So QJ definitely almost 30% ownership right now. You can absolutely add him on your bench, and he could be a viable piece down the stretch for us, especially in the fantasy playoffs if we do endure some more injuries. Xavier Legette, good on Bryce Young, man. I get it. Okay, it came at the expense of the coaching staff in New Orleans. And I mean, Alvin Kamara is basically calling out the entire coaching staff and saying, we got players. I don't know why we're losing. Okay, but, props up to a Bryce Young, man. He starts to look a little bit better past 2 weeks. At least we're seeing that moving forward. Good on him. You never like to see a guy just fade into the dust and fall out of favor with everybody, and he's absolutely supporting guys like an Xavier Legette. 48% owned, almost 70 points. I can absolutely get on board with this with flex play and matchup play, and the fact that he's finding his way into the end zone and Young is finding him. The running game's still working very well in Carolina. I think they play overseas this week in Germany, so that's absolutely another one we got to keep tabs on. But at least Xavier Legette, he needs to be owned at this point. Very good flex appeal for me. Ricky Pearsall, San Francisco 49ers, they're coming off the bye week. He's under 50% owned at this point, and I think he's going to still continue to have a big role. Yes, Jennings likely will come back this week. Believe he was dealing with that hip injury or whatever it was. His injury fades me right now, but at least, we know Purcell's going to have a role. Debo's constantly injured, and Ricky Pearsall's a good route runner. He's got very good hands, and he will build chemistry with a Brock Purdy quite early. I do like the pickup this week for a Ricky Pearsall. Demarcus Robinson, the man, all he does, he scores touchdowns. And I mean, this is such an interesting aspect because there's going to be games where he gives you absolutely nothing. But if they're in the red zone inside the 15, teams are covering a Cooper Kupp. They're covering a Puka Nacua. Who's he going to? Stafford loves this man in the red zone, loves this man on big play opportunity. There is good upside. 70 points, man, for a Robinson. I mean, in deeper leagues, you're dealing with some injuries. Abso-freaking-lutely. Even 12-man leagues, if you're dealing with hurt at the wide receiver spot, absolutely Robinson needs to be owned. Pop Douglas found his way back, man. It was over, 12 points, full PPR, just under 10 half PPR points. I'm okay with it. As long as we're seeing some progression and something moving forward, it's good enough for me at this point. Douglas is one of these guys, extremely explosive, and if a Drake May can continue to find him on the regular, I'm all in on a Pop Douglas. Jalen Tolbert is on the list, graces it once again. But we got some problems in Dallas, man. I'm only putting it here because CeeDee Lamb, he's been diagnosed with an AC joint injury. If y'all know AC joints, very difficult to move your arms up and down. They'll probably shoot his arm up. But, I mean, now they've lost Dak Prescott to the hamstring injury as well, so it's going to downgrade this entire pass game that much more. You're going to have to hope that Jalen Tolbert and a Cooper Rush have some chemistry from the past, and maybe he does feed this man on the regular. So there is good opportunity, especially, like I said, in garbage time productivity, because the Cowboys could be losing a lot more games moving forward without a Dak Prescott. Jalen Tolbert is just one of these guys is going to be maybe a hit and miss each and every week at this point. Westbrook-Ikhine, I mean, this guy, he just catches touchdowns. It's unbelievable. It's like Jalen Naylor. All these guys do is catch TDs. Last 3 contests, Westbrook-Ikhine has been absolutely phenomenal, giving you, 8, 12, and 13 points respectively, half PPR. Very good upside in this offense now without a DeAndre Hopkins. It is a Calvin Ridley. It is Westbrook-Ikhine. I'm absolutely in on picking this guy up and putting him on the bench if you are in dire need of a wide receiver. Parker Washington didn't have the best contest, and I mean, it's a work in progress at this point. We saw more usage of an Evan Ingram in that second half. Parker Washington had his sprinkles, only gave us about 5 points this past week. Somebody's going to have to catch passes, but at least we saw Brian Thomas Jr. He did suit up and play, but I mean, again, it was more of a decoy role for me as he was coming back from that chest injury. So Parker Washington's one of these guys I'm so on right now. Want to see a whole heck of a lot more. Elijah Moore for the Cleveland Brownies. Coming off 12 points, giving you, 6 this past week. Not a great week at all. I mean, like I said, Jameis up and down, but at least we saw some garbage time points here. Elijah Moore, for me, is still kind of one of these guys I'm putting on the back burner, not rushing to the wire to get. Absolutely, man. Jalen Coker, a lot of people, I told y'all, be patient with youthful talent. Always be patient, especially with a guy like Coker's got red zone upside for days, and it will come. They do like the tandem between a Leggett and a Jalen Coker, so this is good news moving forward. Typically, we're going to see rookies of his stature later in drafts, undrafted rookie free agents, start to pop off with the last 4 weeks of the season, so keep him in mind. He could put up a lot of points down the stretch of the season. Mac Hollins does grace the list, like I said, because Amari Cooper dealing with a wrist, Keon Coleman dealing with a wrist injury, so someone's going to have to fill the void, but without those two gentlemen, it's going to be very difficult for a Hollins to get open and make separation. But this man's catching touchdowns. Took the Gabe Davis role in Buffalo, and he's just catching Gabe's TDs. That's basically what he's doing. Outside of that, he's not giving you a whole heck of a lot. But at least without these guys, you know it's going to be Khalil Shakir, it's going to be Dalton Kincaid, and it's going to be James Cook and Ray Davis. So, I mean, if you're just super desperate in like 14 and 16 team leagues, absolutely Hollins is there. We got to watch the injury report for Keon Coleman and an Amari Cooper this week. Cedric Wilson for the New Orleans Saints. Chris Olave, my dude, CO2, he got laid out, lights out. Prayers up to him, man. Hope he is doing well. Said he was good to go, but I mean, he likely could miss some time. Would not be surprised if they put CO2 on the IR for a few weeks. Let him recover. I believe it's like 5 concussions since 2020. Not good news for Chris Olave. So, I mean, Cedric Wilson is the veteran presence on this wide receiver room at this point. So, I mean, hope for the best. What else can you say? Wilson and Tipton with a Kamara. I mean, we'll see. It's just not great. But, I mean, at least we're going to have some target upside in that respect. And Noah Brown still stays on my list. He's got 50 points almost for you. He's kind of taking that role like I was suggesting weeks ago. Get Jaden Daniels in this Washington Commies offense, the Commies, to feed this man the football. He will be a great compliment to a Terry McLaurin because he does have very good hands and speed, and he will make a lot of plays. Tight ends finishing it off. Mike Gesicki is the top priority, but there's going to be a massive caveat on this because, like I said in Start Sit last week, Gesicki will get a lot of target share when T. Higgins is out, and that's exactly what happened. Caught himself 2 tutties, and he had, 20-plus points this past week. Temper those expectations, man. If T. Higgins does come back, you're going to see the haircut come back once again for Gesicki, and everyone's going to be up in arms and all upset and being like, what the hell, man? I spent $5 on this guy, and now he's not even doing anything. This is why, okay? T. Higgins out, Gesicki and Chase are the 1-2 punch in this offense until they get, Andre Yosevash and company to do a little bit more. Gesicki is a great fill-in for targets and volume for a Joey B, very much earning the trust of Joe Burrow. So, I mean, he will still continue to get his sprinkles, wrinkles, but I'm telling y'all, when T is back, see the haircut is coming. Taysom Hill, abso-frickin-lutely. He's got to be picked up at your tight end spot. I mean, especially super flex leagues, if you're struggling with quarterbacks, he can be in there, especially with all the hurt they have at the running back position right now. Taysom is going to have a role to back up in Alvin Kamara and vulture those touchdowns like we did see. Was kind of my thing on Boomer Bust. I said if he doesn't vulture the touchdown, he's going to bust, but he vultured that TD and got himself a boom game. So, I mean, Taysom Hill at this point, 30% owned. You can absolutely pick him up and play him at your tight end. Hunter Henry, okay, with a Drake May, it's okay. It's not great yet, but we're going to see the more improvement as Drake continues to learn football. Hunter Henry is one of these guys, 6 to maybe 12 points, gets in the end zone, but it is very much hit and miss. He booms maybe 25% rate, so it is 1 to 4 on matchup play. You definitely got to watch and keep tabs on that. Jonnu Smith, he's getting still targets from a Tua Tagovailoa at this point. We want to see the integration back to a Tyreek and a Jalen Waddle. Saw a little bit more last week. I think, their season where it's at, it's dump fire. It's basically over. You got to get them back involved. So Jonnu, for me, not necessarily viable, but at least we can, consider it if we require a tight end. Theo Johnson, I told y'all about this kid. He's so good. Caught his first TD, if I'm not mistaken, this past week from a Daniel Jones. He's one of the good ones, man. Big size, speed, strength. He is good at athletic ability. Love me some Theo Johnson, and they got a nice draft class, man. I'm telling y'all, with a Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy, and a Theo Johnson, these guys could anchor this New York Giants team for quite a few years if they continue to progress. Right now, watch list for me continues. Likewise with Jatavion Sanders and an A.J. Barner, they are on my watch list at this point. Sanders with a Bryce Young playing better is on the radar with a Barner, and no offense, still dealing with injury. He does have a role, 8 points this past week, if I'm not mistaken, so he is decently viable if we require it, as he has been earning trust of a Geno Smith. But there you have it. That is waiver wire week number 10. Like I said, very skimpy, but at least we got options to consider depth purposes, handcuff appeal, and adding some depth at our wide receiver spot to play on matchup play. There is opportunities to gain points on this wire, I'm telling y'all, and we'll keep you guys rolling through start sit on the weekend. But nevertheless, as always, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, jump in those comments, give me your thoughts, and we'll see you next time. I am out.